We're just going to read A Bad Case of Stripes today. I hope you like this book. Let's begin. A Bad Case of Stripes by David Shannon. Camilla Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her other friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camilla was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school, and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were so many people to impress. She tried on 42 outfits, but none of them seemed quite right. She put on a pretty red dress and looked in the mirror. Then she screamed. That afternoon, Dr. Bubble came to examine Camilla. Most extraordinary, he claimed. I have never seen anything like this. Are you having a coughing, sneezing, runny nose, aches, pains, chills, hot flashes, dizziness, drowsiness, shortness of breath, or uncomfortable twitching? No, Camilla told him. I feel fine. Well then, Dr. Bumble said, turning to Miss Cream, I don't see any reason why she couldn't go to school tomorrow. Here's some ointment that should help her clear those stripes in a few days. If it didn't work, you know where to reach me. And off he went. The other kids thought this was great. One yelled out, Let's see some purple polka dots. Sure enough, Camilla turned all with purple polka dots. Someone else shouted, Checkerboard! And a pattern of squares covered her skin. Soon everyone was yelling out different shapes and colors, and poor Camilla was changing faster than you could see channels on TV. That night, Mr. Harms, the school principal, called. I'm sorry, Miss Cream, he said. I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camilla home from school. She's just too much of a distraction, and I've been getting calls from other parents. They're afraid those stripes must be contagious. Camilla was so embarrassed she couldn't believe that 2 days ago everyone liked her. Now, nobody wanted to be in the same room with her. Her father tried to make her feel better. Is there anything I can get you, sweetheart? He asked. No, thank you, sighed Camilla. What she really wanted was a nice plate of lima beans, but she had been laughed at for enough in one day. Well, yes, I see, Dr. Bubble mumbled when Mr. Cream phoned the next day. I think I'd better bring in the specialists. We'll be over. About an hour later, Dr. Bubble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them all to the Creams. This is Dr. Grop, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young. Then the specialists went to work on Camilla. They sneezed and jabbed, tapped, and tested. It was very uncomfortable. Well, it's not mumps, concluded Dr. Grump. Or the measles, said Dr. Sponge. Definitely not chicken pox, put in Dr. Cricket. Or sunburns, said Dr. Young. Try these, the specialists. They each handed her a bottle filled with colored pills. Take one of these before bed, said Dr. Grop. Then they filed out the front door, following by Mr. Bubble. That night, Camila took her medicine. It was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she did not feel better. But when she got dressed, her clothes didn't fit right. She looked in the mirror, and there, staring back at her, was a giant multicolored pill with her face on it. Dr. Bubble rushed over as soon as Mrs. Cream called. But this time, instead of the specialist, she brought the experts, Dr. Gord and Dr. Mellon, the first finest scientific minds in the land. Once again, Camila was poked and looked at and listened to. The experts wrote down lots of numbers. Then they huddled together and whispered. Dr. Gord finally spoke. "It might be a virus," he announced with authority. Suddenly, fuzzy little virus balls appeared all over Camila. "Or possibly some form of bacteria," said Mr. Millen. Out popped some squiggly pieces of bacteria tails. "Or it could be fungus," added Dr. Grant. Instantly, Camila was covered with different colors of fungus splotches. The experts looked at Camila, then they looked at each other. "We need to get over these numbers again, back to the lab," Dr. Grout explained. Well, we'll call you when we know something." But then the experts didn't have a clue, much less a cure. By now, the TV news had found out about Camila. Reporters from every channel were outside of her house telling her a story of the bizarre case of incredible changing kid. Soon, a huge crowd was camped outside of her front lawn. The Creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies from psychologists, allergists, herbalists, nutritionists, physics, and an old medicine man, a guru, and even a vegetarian. Each so-called cure only added to poor Camila's strangled appearance, until it was so hard to even recognize her. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals and feathers with this long, furry tail, but nothing worked. One day, a woman who called herself an environmental therapist claimed she could cure Camila. "Close your eyes," she said. "Breathe deeply and become one with the room." I wish you hadn't said that, Camila groaned. Slowly, she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bedroom became her mouth. Her nose was the dresser. The two paintings were her eyes, and the therapist screamed and ran out of the house. "What are we going to do?" cried Mrs. Cream. "It's just too late. It keeps getting worse and worse." She began to sob. At that moment, Mr. Cream heard a quiet little knock at the door in the front. She opened it, and there stood an old lady who was just as plump and sweet as a strawberry. "Excuse me," she said brightly, "but I think I can help." She went into Camila's room and looked around. "My goodness," she said with a shake of her head. "What we have here is a bad case of stripes. One of the worst I've seen." She pulled out a container of small green beans from her bag. "Here," she said. "These might do the trick." Are those magic beans? Asked Mrs. Cream. Oh my, no, replied the kind old lady. There's no such a thing. These are just plain old lima beans. I'll bet you would like some of these, wouldn't you? She asked Camilla. Camilla wanted to be big, heaping playful of lima beans more than just about anything to say, but she was still afraid to admit it. Yuck, she said. No one likes lima beans, especially me. Oh dear, the woman said sadly. I guess I was wrong about you. She put the beans back in her bag and started towards the door. Camilla watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste so good, and being left out from eating them was nothing compared to what she's been going through. She finally couldn't stand it. Wait, she cried. The truth is, I really love lima beans. I thought so, the woman said with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camilla's mouth. Said Camilla. Suddenly, the branches, feathers, and squiggly tails began to disappear. Then the whole room swirled around. When it stopped, there stood Camilla with everything back to normal. Yes, I'm cured, she shouted. Yes, said the old woman. I knew there's a real you inside of there somewhere. She patted Camilla on the head. Then she went outside and vanished into the crowd. Afterward, Camilla wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said that she was weird, but she didn't care a bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted, and she never got a touch of stripes again. This is the last page. If you enjoyed this book, make sure to hit that like button. It supports me.